It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the MIT head softball coach, Brooke Kalman. How are you doing today?
Good, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into college coaching?
Sure. So I kind of had like the inkling that I wanted to become a college softball coach when I was later in like my last 2 years of high school. I just thought it was a really cool job. I'm going through the recruiting process. You have college coaches that are just kind of sitting there watching games like in the summer. So I thought it was just an awesome job to have. And then as I got to Gettysburg, I actually had three coaches in my 4 years there, and all were very unique in their coaching styles and who they were as people. So that kind of really just further solidified like that's what I wanted to do. And I love softball. I love coaching. I was a decent player. I wasn't the best player. I was more so into the strategic part of the game. I loved calling pitches when I was catching. I even called the game when I wasn't catching for the other catcher. So things like that really just kind of solidified that I wanted to be a coach and maybe could be okay at it.
What was your time like in Gettysburg?
Sure. I loved my experience at Gettysburg. An awesome 4 years on and off the field. I think Gettysburg is a great place to be a Division III student athlete. You're going to get a great experience in the classroom, a great experience athletically, and then there's so much other things to do. I was a member of Greek Life. I had a job for the women's basketball coach. I was involved in different clubs and activities. So loved my 4 years there. Like I said, I did have three coaches in 4 years, which obviously isn't what you expect when you're recruited by someone and then they take another job and then there's someone else and then another coach comes in. So that was unique, but I think it was an experience that definitely I made the most of. And for me, it was an opportunity to learn from three different coaches when most college players only get to learn from one coach in their 4 years. So I loved my experience at Gettysburg. Softball wise, I think every year we had 20-win seasons. We're always knocking on the door of postseason, always contenders. Gettysburg really is a place that I think really helped shaped me, who I am as a person and as a coach. And I loved my experience there.
What was your time like as the assistant coach for Ripon College?
So I was the head coach at Ripon, assistant coach at Ursinus. So I can talk about both. So at Ursinus, I actually was the assistant for the coach who recruited me to go to Gettysburg. And that was fantastic because I think a lot of times as an assistant coach, one thing that sometimes holds young assistants back is just not having that relationship piece built up with the head coach yet or not feeling comfortable. That didn't happen for me because Sam Campo obviously recruited me to go to Gettysburg, coached me for my first 2 years. So we had that relationship built up already. She kind of let me take full reign of a lot of different things. She was a pitcher, but she let me work with the pitcher. She let me call pitches. Basically, she let me recruit as much as I wanted to. So without her, I don't think I would have progressed to getting a head coaching job at such a young age. But yeah, Ripon was my first head coaching job out in Wisconsin. So really took a leap of faith there. I knew I was ready to be a head coach. I'm kind of a big believer with coaching. You don't learn how to do it until you actually start doing it. So Ripon, I owe a lot to Ripon. They took a chance on me. I think I was like, just turning 25 when I took that job. And it was a total rebuild. They weren't very good the year before I took over, but the talent was there. And they kind of listened to every word that I said because they were looking for any form of structure that they could find. So that's where I really built my confidence as a head coach. And we ended up having, I think, the winningest season in 4 years or 5 years, possibly. We doubled their win total from the 2 years previous down in Florida. So just in 1 week of playing, we already had more wins than they had accumulated in the last 2 years combined. The people that I worked with, were incredible. Those coaches have been at Ripon for a long time, so they taught me a lot. I worked under Julie Johnson. She passed away a couple summers ago. She was a tough person to work for. She battled through breast cancer, ovarian cancer while I was there. And just to see her fight every single day, just with her own personal battles. But we were getting a new facility out there then. And Julie still showed up to work every single day. Just that experience working under her was incredible as well. And then from the softball part of things, I learned the Midwest recruiting cycle. So when you look at our roster here at MIT, even when you look at the roster at F&M, my previous school I was a coach at, a lot of Midwest kids on that roster. And that's because when I was in Wisconsin, I made that 2-hour drive every single weekend to the Chicago suburbs and just learned that area because it's good softball. And I kind of wanted to get my feet in there and see what I could do with those athletes.
Talking about that, can you talk about, of course, what it was like getting the job as the head coach at MIT?
Sure. Getting the head coach at MIT was a dream of mine only because I really do like that high academic Division III experience. And Ripon was a high academic school, F&M was a high academic school, but MIT is kind of your mecca of high academic D3 schools. And not only is it a great school, it was a great softball program. So they were in the World Series the year before I got there. They were in the World Series 2 years prior to that as well. So I knew it was a place where the standards were high. You're surrounded by excellence every single day at MIT. When I went for that interview, I was immediately sold because all the other coaches, the staff members, the athletes, they want to excel, not just in the classroom, but on the athletic side of things as well. And that's who I am as a person. I love coaching because I like to win, and MIT is a place that you can win at, but then you're also surrounded by greatness every single day. So for me, I was able to kind of fill a lot of needs for me personally, be at a high academic school, and then also be at a school that values winning and values excellence. A little bit humbling as well. Like you're around coaches who have been here for 30, 40 plus years and go to national championships regularly at the D3 level. We have a coach's row on both sides of our office wing. So always constantly in other coaches' office asking them, what would you do about this situation? MIT was the first place where I struggled a little bit as a coach. The connections didn't come that easily with my players. It was a mid-year hire. I think that was part of it. So I was really forced to dig down a little bit and think more about my coaching philosophy, my communication style, and just like how I want to build a team culture. And you think that when you go to a place like MIT where there's a winning tradition, that it's not necessarily like a rebuild, but for me, it was kind of a personal rebuild, a personal coaching rebuild, because I had to kind of change a lot of the things that I did to navigate more towards what these student athletes needed and what the program needed. And we found success in that first year. I know we would have been successful last year, and I know we would have been successful this year as well. But MIT is a great place to be at.
Can you talk about, of course, you said that they had a winning culture before you came there. Can you talk about that and then how you built upon that?
Sure. So they had a winning culture, a very top-down approach. Coach said something, senior said something, or captain said something, everyone else followed. I think that's a great approach, but I also think it doesn't work all the time. So when I came in, I really believe that anyone can lead. As a first year at Gettysburg, as a sophomore at Gettysburg, I'm calling pitches in games. So like people need to trust that me as an underclassman can lead. So we did see some issues with that a little bit. So one thing that we built upon was we have great leaders, and I want to develop you as leaders, but you need to be confident, upperclassmen need to be confident that a first year or a second year can also lead. So that's something that we built upon. The roster is also smaller when I got here. And that's personal choice. Some coaches like smaller rosters, some coaches like bigger rosters. So we kind of brought in a couple bigger recruiting classes, more so to get our own people in. But also I believe that the best teams, like at the D1 level, you see a lot of players on the bench still smiling and they're being successful. That's because there's constantly a competitive atmosphere in their practices because they're always competing for a position basically. So we have really transitioned to not necessarily, I don't think the practices were laid back but I don't think there was much competition. You had your starting shortstop, and that was your starting shortstop. Now we have 2, 3 people competing for that position. We have 2 excellent catchers competing for catching time. So I think that just is going to further create success in our program because they're learning how to compete not just on game day, but also on a daily basis at practices. Those are a couple of things. We tweaked the leadership style a little bit, and we've made practices very, very competitive. And then one other thing, I think when MIT student athletes are very unique, very black and white. There's a yes answer or there's a no answer because that's how math works. That's how STEM works. That's how science works. But that's not how life works. So one thing we constantly have challenged them on is just going with the flow of things. And I think that's one of the biggest disappointments about us not playing and having a COVID season is because we wake up every single day at MIT from the softball standpoint and know like we're not playing games today. We're not competing. So it falls into that whole yes, no, black and white approach with our student athletes. But what we challenge them on, like if we play next season, we will play next season. When we play next season, we might still be dealing with daily testing. We might still be dealing with other teams testing and having to meet certain protocols. So you wake up every morning and you don't know if you're going to test positive or negative. You don't know if you're going to have a game. And I think that's only going to help our student athletes because they're going to be forced to go with the flow and go with the ebb and flow of things. So we're constantly trying to put them in uncomfortable situations. But I wish we were playing just for that reason of them just not knowing, like you might have a game today, you might not have a game today, as opposed to us waking up every single day and knowing like, yep, we're not having a game.
Can you talk about that, knowing that you won't have a game and opting out of the season and stuff?
Yeah, so it's going to be close to, I think it's going to be over 1,000 days since we played a game when we start playing again. So May 13th, 2019 was our last game. Was a 14-inning thrower in the regional final. So we got the most of our last game, but it stinks. And that's the one thing I tell our players, like, I know it stinks. Like, I'm not going to fake that, like, practicing socially distant is any fun, but we are making the most of it. We're really able to get to know our players on a personal level a little bit more. We're able to dig deep with individual skills a little bit more. We're able to focus on the little things that we usually don't have time to focus on because we're more so worried about getting ready to play a WPI or a Babson. Instead, we've been focusing on like base running things, focusing on bunt technique, all these little things that as a coach at the D3 level, you rush by. So I think in ways we're going to be stronger, but I think in ways just not having the experience of playing, it's tough. We have 7 first years on the roster. We have 3 sophomores, and next year we'll have 7 first years coming in. So I'm going to have 3 I'm going to have 3 class years who haven't played a softball game ever when we step on the field, probably in late February, early March. And that's frightening. And I'll probably lose a lot of nights of sleep because of that. But I also think in ways it's exciting because as a coach, when you come to a new program, you always talk about making it your own. And I think like we fast tracked to making it my own because game one of the 2022 season, like it's basically going to be people who have never worn an MIT uniform before playing. And that's exciting as well. But like I said, it's frightening and it's heartbreaking for the team. It's heartbreaking for my assistants. I have a young staff and we've been together now for 2 years and haven't coached a game together. And that's just, it's upsetting, but I guess it is what it is. At the end of the day, we're at MIT, one of the greatest schools, not only in the country, but the world. So you have to look at it that way. But I wish we were playing.
Of course, whenever it comes to recruitment, can you talk about how difficult it is now, knowing that you haven't played a game? So some of your seniors that might have left are still there, and you still have maybe to fill up the roster.
Yeah. So I think one of the bigger challenges is not being able to see like my seniors next year were the first years when I came in and they didn't get a lot of playing time. And the biggest challenge is going to be I haven't seen 3 of my class years currently, well, 2 of them, I guess, in gameplay. So I'm forced to make recruiting decisions. Like we have a sophomore shortstop, but I haven't seen her in a game. We have a freshman catcher. I haven't seen her in a game. So I'm forced to make decisions like, am I bringing in a catcher? Am I bringing in a shortstop when I haven't seen my current team playing games? So that's challenging. Overall at MIT sells itself. Like if you want to study STEM or you want to be an engineer or go to space or be an astronaut, like you're coming to MIT. Now you need to be qualified to get in. Like if you're not meeting certain marks that we need you to be meeting, like we're not going to be able to recruit you. But at the end of the day, like we can attract high caliber student athletes to MIT because it's MIT. And then it also helps that we do have a strong softball program. So a lot of our athletes we're recruiting, they're also looking at Patriot League schools and they're looking at Ivy League schools. And sure, you can go to a Patriot League school and an Ivy League school, but just know like you're going to be competing for just league championships every year. At MIT, you're going to compete for a NUMAC championship every year, and then you're going to compete for a national championship every year. So that's a conversation we have with our recruits a lot, because in general, MIT attracts competitive people. So hopefully they want to compete for the biggest thing you can compete for, which is a D3 national championship. So but the biggest challenge right now is just not knowing what we currently have and then trying to recruit with not knowing that.
What is the official visit like?
Sure. So I try to do 2 visits. I try to get them to campus when they just meet with me and my coaching staff, and I'll walk around with them and we go through what my coaching philosophy is. We ask them a series of questions because I I have a coaching staff and I'm a person, like I like to joke around with my student athletes. We talk a lot about between the lines. Between the lines, it's all business, but like outside the lines, like I want you to come in my office. I want you to eat lunch there. I want you to joke around with me, talk to me about your life, your family, if you have a boyfriend, all of that stuff. Like I like to know that stuff because at the end of the day, we're people and you're building relationships. But between the lines, it's serious. And I might get on you like for not running through first base, but I hope they know the next day they can come into my office and we can talk about it and then we can joke about it basically. So I like to get them so they know all of that. I like to know what their personality's like because I want to bring in kids that have a sense of humor. I want to bring in kids that can joke around with me, can kind of take it on the field too. I think we have a tough coaching staff. It all comes from a good place, but we want to hold them to the highest expectations because I think that's what coaches do. We want to constantly push them. So we bring them that first time to kind of let them get to know us. And then the second time they come to campus, they meet with me for like a second, and then I give them to a player or two student athletes and they stay overnight. And like, it's now on the team to kind of show them what it's like to be a softball player. I want them to ask questions about me as a coach. I want them to go to class. I want them to actually watch practice because we don't like to hide anything. Because if you kind of get a negative feeling from a player or from another coach, like there's a reason for that. So we tell our athletes, like, be totally authentic. Don't try to impress them. Like, be yourself, and I'm going to be myself too. Because it doesn't do any good if you're hiding things from a recruit, because they're going to learn very quickly when they get into the program what it's really like. So we try to be authentic as possible with those 2 visits.
Of course, on the official visit, do you plan on letting them try on jerseys or looking at the jerseys?
No, that's not a really thing at the Division 3 level. So no, we don't do that. I also think that like putting on a jersey is something that should be earned. I just don't. I don't see the point of that. Like when you put on that jersey on game day, like that's special, and I don't think that should be taken for granted in any sort of way. And I could let a kid try on a jersey, and the next day they can call me up and say, "Oh, I'm going to Harvard." So like, no, we don't do any of that. You earn that jersey, and on game 1, like that's when you put that jersey on for the first time, or actually for picture days when you put that jersey on for the first time.
What are some of your future plans whenever y'all prepare for this upcoming year?
Sure. Right now we go live. So we have our batters facing live at bats off of our ace pitcher. We have a senior pitcher in Colin Campbell, all-American caliber pitcher, probably top 10 pitcher in Division 3. We have her throwing as many live at bats to our current team as possible because we won't have her after this year, which is really unfortunate. So we'll continue with that in the fall. Hopefully MIT allows us to play some scrimmages in the fall, and I'll look to play the best teams in our area so we can get up to speed. And then I would like to take our team. We got invited to the NFCA Leadoff Classic, where top 20 teams in the country get invited. And talking to my administration, they're like, "Are you sure you want to throw your team who hasn't played games in 2 years against the best competition in the country?" And I said, heck yeah. Like, how am I going to teach first years and sophomores and juniors who haven't played, like, what it's like to compete at the highest level without playing those teams? So we're going to get right back to it. We're going to play a challenging schedule once again. Hopefully we're playing those teams down in Georgia. When we go to Florida, we're with the WEAC conference, so all the Wisconsin schools, and we look to play the toughest competition possible, because when we get back to our own conference in the NUMAC, it's a strong conference, but hopefully those teams don't seem as tough compared to what we played down in Florida and in Georgia. So I hope to get right back into it, and I'm just throwing our team to the wolves right away. And we had this conversation as a coaching staff and as a team a few weeks ago. Do I expect us to be beating regionally ranked opponents right away? No, I don't, because we're going to have that whole experience piece, but our schedule is going to be built intentionally to be tough so we can win our conference. Do I expect us to get an at-large bid next season? Probably not. Are we going to be competitive? Yes, but our way into the regional tournament is going to be by winning the NUMAC, and we got to get back to that mindset that we are going to have to rebuild in a sense, but we should be winning our conference once again.
What advice would you give upcoming high school athletes looking to play college softball?
Sure. To keep pushing through it, I think a lot of times they hear that there's not going to be roster spots because teams are giving these years back to their athletes. I see it in this way: there's going to be an influx or a flux of seniors and teams losing athletes all at once, because you're going to have grad students next year that are leaving, seniors leaving. So there's going to be opportunities, and these student athletes need to continue to push, continue to fight. I'm a big believer, until someone tells you, no, you can't play at that school, then you can play at that school. Until a coach literally looks you in the eye or tells you via email, like, no, you're not good enough, like, you continue to push and you continue to fight. So that's my one piece of advice I would give them. Like, until someone tells you, no, you can't play here, then you can play there. And that's on that coach or that school you want to go to tell you that.
What advice would you give upcoming college coaches looking to get started?
Sure, to take that leap of faith, especially in the softball world. For me, I knew not many coaches probably wanted to take a job in Wisconsin because it's cold, and softball's a warm weather state. Softball's a warm weather sport. Wisconsin's a cold weather state. So I decided to apply for jobs in the Midwest because I knew, like, I had a better chance of getting those jobs as opposed to applying for jobs in other parts of the country. So you need to be willing to take that leap of faith. You need to be willing to get out of your comfort zone and to go different places. I hear so many times, like, I'll reach out to, or I hear a lot of stories about assistant coaches saying they can't get their foot in the door as a head coach. And I say, well, where are they applying? Oh, they're applying to this NESCAC job, this school in New England, this school in the Mid-Atlantic. Well, so is everybody else. So you need to be willing to leave your area. If you really are serious about this, you're going to have to put your profession ahead of some other stuff for a couple of years to get that experience. So that would be my best advice. Get out of your comfort zone, network as much as you can. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to make sacrifices, it's going to be really tough to get your foot in the door.
Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the MIT program app?
Sure. Twitter, I'm a big tweeter. I'm actually up to, I think, over 1,500 followers now, which is great. So Twitter, personally, and with MIT Softball. And then MIT Softball also has an Instagram account as well. All my other stuff is private. So Twitter would be the one where you can get me at for an unprivate experience of me.
Thank you again, Coach Brooke, for your interview, and best of luck with MIT in this upcoming year.
Thank you very much, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Brooke, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thanks, Brandon.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.